Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Most mornings for me look like this. Around 6:30 to 6:45, we have another dog now, Sam and Ari. Not Brisket. This one's name is Laka. And Laka, around 6:45 in the morning, literally stands on my chest in the bed and whines until I get up to take her outside. And I do. And when I get up, I go downstairs and I make a cup of coffee. And I sip on my coffee. When it's nice out like today, I sit on the front stoop, or the back door, really stoop, like the stair right here. And I watch her play and go to the bathroom and do her thing outside. And I watch reels, either reels on TikTok, or reels on Facebook, or reels on Instagram. It's just one of the drugs I have in my life. And in the scheme of things, it could be a lot worse. And I learned some things about people. Some make me laugh, and some make me cringe, and some give me some history, and some scare me. And I saw a bit that I had never seen before that gave me a lot of color this past Thursday. And when I watched it, something washed over me, like I understood something that I never understood before until that moment. It was a clip of Chris Rock toasting and celebrating Adam Sandler on being awarded the Mark Twain Prize for humor at the Kennedy Center, formerly known as the Trump Center. Thank you. I worked on that for 3 days. And Chris Rock is telling the story. And Chris Rock, you know, especially as a Bergen boy, he is a successful comedian because so much of what he's telling is thoughtful and true. And you got to have a real brain to appreciate his humor, and I love Chris Rock. I think he's great. And he tells this bit, which is a true story, that he was bused to a predominantly white school in the 70s in Brooklyn. And as he said, he goes, it wasn't Selma, it was Brooklyn, but he was one of 3 black kids in a predominantly white school, about 1,000 kids in the school, and there he was in the school. And he said, no one sat with him at lunch. No one talked to him. No one engaged with him. He was seen as the outsider. He said, except for one kid. One kid invited him over his house to play. And the kid's name was David Moskowitz. And to quote Chris Rock, he goes, a Jew. The Jews are nice people. That was Chris Rock's line. David Moskowitz. And when he said that, I got this incredible and immense moment of pride, this moment of satisfaction, moment of happiness. Like, that's my tribe, that's my people, that's what we stand for. I don't know David Moskowitz. I never met David Moskowitz. I did some research on David Moskowitz and found out that he's still one of Chris Rock's very best friends today, which is great. Chris goes on in his bit to say that he was a struggling artist trying to get time on the comedy stage on Saturday nights, and then one Saturday night, this kid, Adam Sandler, comes in, and he's got time. And he's on a set, and Chris wants to hate him because he's been waiting years to get a 5-minute bit on Saturday night, and Adam Sandler just walks on, and he's in college. And he does this bit that is hilarious. Apparently, he does this joke, Sandler, where Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in one night. And he does an impression of the coach on the other team. And he said, who's covering Wilt? That's a pretty funny joke if you follow basketball. And Chris really liked it. And Adam talked to him after his bit. And then Chris went up and did his stand-up act. And then afterwards, Sandler said to him, hey, we're all going to hang out. Why don't you come with us? And that was Chris Rock saying that another Jewish guy just had this inertia of saying, just come with us. Now, I've never met Adam Sandler. I don't know him. I don't know anything about him except for what all of you already know. But I imagine that what drove David Moskowitz and what drove Adam Sandler to do that was not trying to fulfill the message of what the Torah taught them at their bar mitzvah. And I would imagine that what drove them to do that was not their parents saying to them, listen, I know you don't want to, but you take that little black boy and you invite him over to the house to play. I imagine that is not what happened. I imagine that they were raised in a household that was relatively colorblind, that didn't really care about someone's background or gender or orientation, that they just cared about, to quote Martin Luther King Jr., the content of their character, who their heart was. And David Moskowitz befriended Chris and said, let's be friends. And he stayed friends all the time, way before Chris hit it. It wasn't like he ignored him and then they connected again. He was in it with him before Chris made it famous. And the same thing with Sandler, who were just fledgling artists at the time. And when I watched this, something came over me. It's as if it was almost an epiphany, like it crystallized for me. And that this was a defining moment for what Jews in America believed. That to define what Judaism was, it was about welcoming the outsider, the stranger, the downtrodden, the person on the margins. That was who we were. In the 60s, it was Heschel marching with King over the Pettus Bridge. And Heschel didn't march with King because he thought that this would be good for Jewish image. And he didn't march with King because it would promote his lot in life, or that he would get a better professorship, or that it would bring more money to the Jewish Theological Seminary where he worked. The reason why Heschel marched with King is because he had a moral barometer that was dialed in to saying, if you are downtrodden, if you are marginalized, if you are persecuted, and it is wrong what's happening to you, I don't want to sit on the sidelines. I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of standing up for what is right. And it's that same inherent message in what it was to grow up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, at least for me in my world, for David Moskowitz, I would imagine. Now, I'm saying this, to be fair, some of you might know who David Moskowitz is. I don't know. But my instinct is that David Moskowitz wasn't doing this to curry favor. He wasn't doing this because he wanted a teacher to see him and give him an extra grade bump. He was doing this because he grew up in a house that said, just see everyone as who they are and how they are. And that behavior became part of the calling card of what is Judaism in America, what is Judaism in the diaspora. And to put a phrase on it that all of you probably know but maybe aren't dialed into, that's what the notion of Tikkun Olam is. Tikkun Olam literally means repairing the world. And what Tikkun Olam means is our job as a Jew is to take these broken, shattered pieces, to take people who are on the margins and bring them closer. And that's what defines our Judaism. And frankly, it's something that makes me feel pretty good. When I watched that Chris Rock story, I felt good. I felt good. That's my tribe. Those are my people. You know, Jimmy Kimmel used to do this thing on the street where he would set up these scenarios of someone who fell or someone who tripped or someone who was selling something they shouldn't, all these funny things, and see how people would react on the street. And one time there was a person who was I don't even remember the circumstances, but these two kids with yarmulkes came over and helped the person. And Jimmy put it on and said, well, that's a good moment. And I had pride in my tribe. These are my people. That is what it is to do what's called a Kiddush Hashem, to do something that sanctifies God's name. It felt really good to watch. And by the way, the inverse happens. Harvey Weinstein is the inverse. Madoff is the inverse. Jeffrey Epstein is the inverse. That the same amount of shame we can feel in them being part of the Jewish community is the same amount of pride we can feel in David Moskowitz, Adam Sandler, Abraham Joshua Heschel. Except one thing I think that has happened over the last 50 years in particular, because it was the 70s when Chris Rock was bused to that school in Brooklyn. What happened was Judaism, which used to have as a spoke, as a part, as a component, as a major artery of what it was Tikkun Olam and making the world a better place, that calling card supplanted everything Judaism stood for, and Judaism then became, as a definition, Tikkun Olam and nothing else. That to be Jewish, you had to bring in the marginalized, you had to bring in the oppressed and the downtrodden, you had to bring in others and do the right thing to repair the world, but other parts of Judaism no longer mattered. Which is interesting, but it's not how we were shaped as a people. We were shaped as a people that said, listen, if you want to be Jewish, part of who we are defined as is doing the right thing, but it's not the only thing we are defined as. I was struggling to think of a few different examples of things that have evolved over time and changed what their definition is. I have 3 for you. Coca-Cola was started by a pharmacist to help upset stomachs. It was a precursor to Pepto-Bismol. And what people found out is that it tasted really good. The fizzy water and the syrup was delicious. And the next thing you know, people were drinking Coca-Cola all the time, whether they had an upset stomach or not. And now Coca-Cola is not your go-to drug when you have an unsettled digestive issue. It has just morphed into something totally different than what it started as. Magnolia Bakery started as a cupcake establishment until one day, one of its bakers decided to make an old recipe they knew called banana pudding. And if any of you have ever had the banana pudding, you'll know that you'll never order anything else ever again from Magnolia Bakery except for the banana pudding. Even if you don't like bananas, you will order this because it is a small taste of what the world to come will bring in tasting this pudding. And the best example that was shared with me by a Bima buddy today was Amazon. Amazon started as a bookstore that you didn't have to go to your local bookstore and say, do you have this book? I'll wait a week till you get it, then I'll come back. You went online and ordered your book, and then it would be sent to you quickly. You didn't have to wait. Now, ironically, one of the things that can take the longest to receive at Amazon is a book. But anything you need can literally be at your home in hours because of Amazon, sometimes even by drone. It has totally morphed into something that it was established as, into something totally almost unrecognizable in a different end. And this is what I think I'm struggling with today, and it crystallized for me, and maybe it will tickle something for you this Shabbat. Maybe it won't. But what I saw and realized and appreciated when I saw that bit by Chris Rock was that this calling card by David Moskowitz and others like it has become something that for Judaism we all can do. Whether you are religious or not religious, whether you've been to Israel, you haven't been to Israel, whether you speak Hebrew, you don't speak Hebrew, whether you were raised kosher and religious or you weren't raised kosher, it doesn't matter. All of us can help someone cross the street. All of us can give tzedakah. All of us can do something to make another person feel welcome and included. And it evened the playing field out so that all of us felt connected to Judaism. But if I asked all of you here to read Torah, there's only a few of you who could. If I asked all of you here to tell me some of the virtues of Rosh Hashanah, just a handful of you could. But if I asked all of you to go and do something that's going to help the Jewish people by helping another, all of you here could. There are no barriers to that. And as a result, Tikkun Olam really became something that connected with so many different people. And why shouldn't it make us proud? It should make us proud that this is who we are and how we are and what we're about. But what I became worried about in watching that bit is that definition of Judaism has supplanted, in some ways, other parts of definition of who we are and how we are too. Meaning, a people that have a sense of commandedness, a people that are a religion, an ethnicity, and part of a land, a people that are connected to God and to prayer, a people that believe in certain baseline laws that we aim to keep. Even if we don't keep them all, we appreciate that they exist. And if we forsake all of that foundational side for just the Tikkun Olam side, then we have totally reworked and reestablish what Judaism is to us. Now, it doesn't mean that Judaism isn't malleable. It doesn't mean that it isn't dynamic. But it means that if you take away its core and its foundation, then maybe we start to lose what its essence is. And if Amazon were still to say it is the best and biggest bookstore in the world, well, then it has to make as its calling card selling books. And if Magnolia Bakery says we are a cupcake bakery, they better figure out a way to sell more cupcakes than banana pudding. And if Coca-Cola's real purpose is to make our stomachs settle, then perhaps they should be promoting the idea of that secret recipe in their syrup as something in the pharmaceutical aisle. My point is that it might work in the for-profit world of, hey, we have found something that's going to bring us a lot of income. But that's not how religion works. It might bring us good marketing. It might bring us good media and good recognition. And I am not for an instant encouraging us to forsake the David Moskowitzes and the Adam Sandlers of the world. Not for a second. But what I want us to be thoughtful about, to think about, to remember, is our responsibility to heed to the core components that define what Judaism is about. And that if we are only a people about making the world better and not a people about the laws of the Torah, who totally forsake the notion of what kosher is, who totally ignore the notion of Shabbat or holidays, or what it is to be part of a tribe or our people, or we think it's okay to include the downtrodden person or the marginalized person, but we are against the state of Israel and its existence as a Jew, we have lost the plot. We have missed what we are in business for, and while that might work for Amazon and Coca-Cola, it doesn't work for our religion. And we are at a difficult and challenging crossroads in Judaism. A crossroads that I never anticipated being at and that I don't have the recipe to get out of. But I think it's a time for us to hold tight to those parts that bring us pride, to hold tight to those parts that bring us a sense of satisfaction, to hold tight to those parts that make us feel that we're doing our part to create a world that God would be proud of. But at the same time of holding tight to them, to not let go of that other side that is foundational, that is core, that is the root, the trunk of who we are, that gives off the light, that is the aorta of all of the other vessels that come off of it. Because otherwise, the Tikkun Olam part, it doesn't work. And the other thing with Tikkun Olam is that it's a moving target. What is a social justice today wasn't a social justice yesterday, and it won't be a social justice tomorrow. But Shabbat and Kashrut and holidays in Israel, they were our core yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And some of us think, I don't have the ability to hold both. I got to pick one. You can hold both. It's really easy. Any of you with more than one child, you probably remember when that second child was born and you say, how am I going to love this child the way that I loved the first child? And then it just happens. You realize that your heart develops other chambers where you can grow in your love. And so too are we able, as thoughtful members of our religion, to hold tight to Tikkun Olam and hold tight to our core parts of our tradition and to blend those in to what our future could be and should be. And when we hold them tight together, I am hopeful and optimistic about what our tomorrow looks like with David Moskowitz and Abraham Joshua Heschel and Moses and Maimonides and others who blend all of those core values into one, into the religion that we could be, should be, and will be. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.